I recently ran into an old co-worker from the time we worked at a sandwich shop in the truck stop. We chatted for a while before he had to leave, but I started thinking about my stay at that place, specifically the creepy sandwich guy. In college, I worked some overnights at a truck stop. It was a pretty safe place in a small town, and there had only been 3 incidents in the past 4 years before I had gotten hired. 1, a trucker got robbed. 1 group of ladies got arrested for servicing the truckers, and 1 overdose. I was never really worried, even though my coworkers seemed a little concerned that I was a young person working at a truck stop late at night with only 1 other employee with me at all times. Usually it was really slow. Most of the time I'd get 3 or 4 truckers come in the first hour. A couple of people came in with the munchies and ordered 3 dozen cookies one time, but it was maybe 1 or 2 an hour. So I'd spend about 3 hours cleaning ovens, washing dishes, deep cleaning the lobby and those kind of things. Then I'd spend whatever time in between customers doing my homework. The overnight boss at the other side, which was the gas station, was okay with it as long as everything was cleaned and temped regularly. A few weeks before I inevitably left this place, a guy came in 20 minutes before my shift was over, so it was about 5 a.m. at this point. My coworker had arrived early so he could fill up some paperwork he had to get done, so he was just sitting in the back office. I started making this customer a sandwich, making chit-chat like usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He told me he was driving from New York to Wisconsin, asked me a little about how my night had been. Nothing crazy. I wrapped up his sub, rang it up, and threw in a small discount for him since he seemed nice, and I was just happy I was getting ready to go home for a few hours sleep before I headed to campus. When I went to take his change, things went wrong. He dropped the coins in my hand, but suddenly he had his grip tight around my wrist. The next thing I knew, I'm on the other side of the counter on the floor. He had yanked me across the counter and still had a tight grip around my wrist. Thank God my coworker was there. The manager on the other side had slipped into the bathroom, so this guy knew I was the only one there at the moment. My coworker, while filling out papers, was looking at the cameras and had seen everything. He was out of the back just seconds after I hit the ground, and before I really knew what was going on, he had chased the guy outside. He didn't pursue him far, afraid that someone else nearby would just come after him. He ran back inside, shut the doors, and shouted to the manager to call the police immediately. The cops came. They searched the area and watched the security videos, but nothing ever came from it. The guy disappeared, and I never heard anything about him again. I put in my 2 weeks notice the following day after my nerves had calmed down. I was switched around so I would work during the day for my last few shifts, and they made it a policy that 2 people were to be working both sides of the truck stop on overnight shifts from this point on. I still live about a half hour from there, and honestly I haven't went back since my last day, just because that memory is still in my mind, almost 8 years later.
The Mall Monitor, submitted by Life as a Story. 2008, Francis Scott Key Mall. I'll never forget the day my instinct saved my friend. I'd gone to the mall with my childhood friend Sarah. We had actually been catching up. I never had many friends in school, and in high school me and her never had the same classes. Outside of school, life was mostly sleep for me, so this was as good a time as any for us to catch up. Sarah was petite, small, and skinny, but I'd never call her frail. I was a tall, heavy-set dude with a bad limp. She would often joke that she felt safer with me because I looked like a big scary bear, and the limp made me look like a badass who always won. She knew I hated being seen as scary, but would often tease me, and this mall walk would be no different. After about 2 hours of walking around, we had been leaving Hot Topic when I felt like I was being watched. Like we were being watched. I finally caught the eye of some guy in sunglasses, a tan shirt, gray jacket, and black dress shoes looking at us from across the center of the mall. The most offsetting thing was him. He was clean cut, clean shaven, short black hair, and everything about him screamed official. But his clothes looked like he had grabbed them off the floor and tossed them on. At first I thought he was a cop in regular attire and that I had once again been falsely accused of stealing. Little background, the owner of the mall's Walden Books had taken a strong disliking to me. I accidentally had busted their theft sensor 2 years ago, when I had fallen over onto one stupidly distracted talking to another person. But he never said anything nor got close to us to try and stop us. I decided I wanted to see what was really going on and led us into Sears. Sure enough, he followed. I didn't tell Sarah about him but made a decision. There was a hall to our left for restrooms down by the service bays, and a waiting room, and a good 12 or so feet ahead of us was electronics. I asked Sarah to wait for me by electronics while I went to the bathroom. His pace slowed when he saw us splitting up. I glared him down as I came his way, and then turned down the hall pretending to look at my phone using it as a mirror. He clearly looked at me as his head turned, but he continued straight on past the hall. I turned into the bathroom doorway, and as soon as he was beyond view of the hall, I turned around. My turn, I muttered to myself and laughed a bit. I felt like a kid playing spy. I had guessed that this guy might notice me, so I came out of the hall and made my way towards the tools. The tools selection wasn't separated by any walls, but just by the walkway giving me a clear view and cover behind toolboxes and shelves. He was following Sarah now, but still kept a good distance. What annoyed me about this was Sarah never got the feeling of being watched and looked over like I had. In fact, both times she looked at him had only been when she looked around the store. Now I needed to know what was going on, but I wasn't going to cause a scene, or so I thought. I walked over from tools. Sarah saw me coming and joined me. We went back into the mall and then headed for an exit. Sarah had started to ask me why we weren't heading towards our cars, but a simple hand motion from me cut the question out. We walked outside and he was a considerable bit behind us, so I rushed us through the 2 sets of doors, giving them time to close. We walked to the edge of the overhang and stopped. I explained everything while pretending to look for our cars, then turned around. He stood in the area between the doors. Now he had no way to avoid both of us seeing him directly. We walked back in and he turned, standing against the side wall. I now stood in front of him. "What's up, Chief?" I asked. Mocking a cop might not be a smart idea, but if he was a cop or even mall security, then he'd now have to call me out. He wouldn't look directly at either of us. Gonna say I stole something? I've been minding my own business. How about you mind yours? I was now projecting at him, but he said nothing, and even having raised my arms at him, he didn't move and didn't look at either of us. I opened the next door and waved Sarah through, stopping the door almost touching his face. Sarah had hurried on ahead. I stepped through, and the next few seconds remained frozen in my mind. He sighed almost as if relieved I hadn't hit him with the door. I walked in and took a slow pace. Sure enough, he followed. However, he hadn't noticed that I was now walking backwards. I backed right into him, and my upper arm caught the feeling of a holster under his arms as we bumped into each other. In Maryland at the time, concealed carry by civilians wasn't legal. I now knew something was entirely out of place. I was pissed off, but I was also lucky as mall security rounded the corner to the exit. "Gun! He's got a gun!" I yelled. He backed away from me as mall security came running up with a taser drawn. "She's lucky you're so annoying," he had muttered as he continued back towards the exit and mall security. I didn't stick around to find out anything. I ran for Sarah, grabbed her wrist, and took off through the mall towards the security office. The head of security in the office was not exactly thrilled to see me, but was aware of what had been going on. Apparently, they had been watching since we entered Sears. The tapes showed them that this man had been following Sarah since she parked. He had actually only started trying to hide himself when she met up with me. The most unreal part of all of this, though, they caught him but released him when he produced an official government ID and number. To me, I don't care if he was God himself. This isn't the type of behavior you just let slide.
"10 years ago, I dated this guy, David. I don't talk much about David, only to my current partner and very close friends. Talking about him just makes me nervous. When David and I met, I was only 17, and he was a post-secondary student in his early 20s. Being a near-homeless gay teenage dropout with raging hormones, a complicated home life, and limited dating prospects, I jumped into a relationship with him. Our relationship progressed very rapidly, and I moved into his Toronto apartment after only a few months of dating. I was young and inexperienced with relationships. David was a horrible guy. Of course, in the beginning, it was great. We were in love, very much so. But after a few months, that began to change. One night, after our first minor fight over laundry, I got a glimpse of how angry he could get over a simple matter. That night, I had a dream in which he held a pillow against my face, smothering me until I asphyxiated. His facial expressions contorted in terrifying ways, morphing into a face of a demon. In hindsight, this dream was trying to tell me something I should have trusted my instincts. 6 months into our relationship, he no longer hid these parts of himself. See, David was bipolar disorder and ignored his diagnosis. In retrospect, I can confidently say he is a sociopath as well. As a teenager, I was not equipped to deal with this. He was incredibly manipulative, eventually keeping me away from my friends and family, especially male coworkers. He stole my money from me and put his bills and debts in my name without my consent. He would gaslight me on the strangest things, trying to convince me I was a horrible person. He constantly accused me of cheating, almost daily by the end. He would fly off the handle suddenly. He was often physically violent as well. I can't exactly remember how long I continued in this relationship, as it is a part of my life I try to forget, but it was around 2 years, I believe, maybe a little more. On my first attempt to leave him, he followed me as I left during the night. I passed through a well-lit city park on my way to my friend's house. Before I knew it, I was on the ground with David on top of me, hands around my throat. Thankfully, passerby came by to aid me. Don't ask me why I didn't report him for any of this. I was very confused. I really thought he was going to end me. I didn't tell anyone about that night for years after. He attacked me once more shortly after I left him, when we bumped into each other at a party. I found out later that he had been cheating on me the entire time we were together with multiple people, including my best friend's straight boyfriend. Go figure, right? Fast forward a few years, I'm dating an awesome guy, and I'm working as a charity fundraiser, collecting donations for nonprofits on busy Toronto streets. I get angry for some strange emails and texts from David once in a while. While changing my phone number and email address when he finds them out, I never responded to him. I'm informed that he moved to Montreal. I spot him a few times a year stalking me, poking his head out from behind a street corner while I'm working, through my window as he walks around my neighborhood trying to figure out which house I live in, or around my work office building. It made me very anxious every time he did this. Every so often, he tries to infiltrate whatever group of friends he can connect with to me. I see him pop up in social media photos with friends I have recently hung out with, despite living in a different city. I don't know how he was finding out these things about my personal life. However, all of this slows down as time goes on until a year or so passes with no sign of him. Until I get an email last year saying that he wants to talk, briefly about things that happened in our relationship. It's worded straightforwardly, not like the rants he used to send me, and I wonder if he wants to apologize to me. I don't respond, but I message a mutual friend whom I trust to find out how he is doing. My friend warns me that he still is obsessed with me, and that his mental health has declined, and they are no longer close friends because of it. He advises me never to speak to him again, for both of our sake. Out of morbid curiosity, I set up a fake Facebook account and creep his profile, sending me into a rabbit hole of links on his Tumblr and beyond. He is an artist now. I find a post with photos of one of his latest works, the creepiest freaking zine I've ever seen. It depicted an extremely bloody scenario and a poem. I don't remember the poem exactly, but it was something about gruesomely hurting a boy who didn't love him back, describing the death in detail and contending what he deserved. I am more than a little uneasy at this point. I'm actually pretty scared. 6 years is more than enough time to get over your ex. This was just obsession at an alarming level. I changed my email once more and asked our mutual friend to keep me updated if he ever decided to take a trip to my city. I also deleted my Facebook and most of my social media accounts, and I haven't seen any sign of him in over a year. I'm now 27. I've worked through a lot of the issues that David left inside of me. Now I have a really kick-ass partner and a squishy cat. I'm a university student, and my life has been pretty rad. Still, I'm always expecting to get an email or to see him down the street. I sometimes wonder if this is over, or if anything will change when he tracks me down again. Maybe he's simply biding his time. So yeah, let's not meet, Stalker ex-boyfriend David, ever again. And if you ever read this, considering it my closure on a trash relationship, and go get some help.
This story happened in October of 2004, back when I was still a third-year high school student. My friends and I stuck around the school late at night after our annual Halloween party. We had agreed to try out my friend's Ouija board. It wasn't the brightest idea, but we needed a thrill. We found a nice spot under a huge Nara tree and proceeded with our half-assed ritual. There were 5 of us, 2 boys and 3 girls. We were all expecting some kind of paranormal contact. Rumors had it our school was haunted, but we've really never experienced anything firsthand. And it was Halloween, when all the spirits come out to play. We all wanted to get spooked. Also, we've never seen a Ouija board firsthand before, so we were pretty excited. Our school was an old Spanish colonial house built in the 1800s when the Spaniards still occupied the Philippines. We were in a section of the school that doesn't get used often. Located inside a creepy old Jesuit house, people only go there when they needed to use the restroom, store equipment on one of those sheds, or make out with their boyfriends or girlfriends. We sat down in the middle of an open space with only an exposed bare bulb nearby, illuminating the surroundings. We were all having a laugh, scaring each other with what-if scenarios. It was your typical dumb kids doing typical dumb kid things. My friend, who brought the Ouija board, proceeded to place it in the middle of our circle. If I remember correctly, it was the glow-in-the-dark version, which we found hilarious, but it gave us the ability to see what was written in the dark. Not knowing what to do, and going after what we've seen in the movies, we all proceeded to place our index finger on top of the planchette. We sat there, looking at each other, until one of us said it. What's next? We didn't know if there was a proper way to start the ritual, plus the board didn't come with instructions, so we decided to just throw in a question. Is anyone there? I called out to the darkness. If there are spirits living here, please talk to us. One of the girls joined in. We clearly had no idea what we were doing. Still, nothing. Not even the slightest bit of wind. One of my friends jerked the planchette, and the girl who brought the Ouija board screamed, breaking the silence. We all laughed at how ridiculous it was. After a bit of joking around, we decided to give it another go. We all placed our index fingers on the planchette once more and asked, if there's anyone there, we would like to make contact. Don't break the circle, one of my friends jokingly said. Shut up, I whispered. We were just about ready to give up when the wind started to pick up. The stillness broke and the darkness around us seemed to move. Just a coincidence, we thought. Okay, don't break the circle, I yelled out. Is anyone there? I was excited. It was like a scene from a movie with dirt and dead leaves swirling around us. Guys, I'm scared, my friend sitting beside me said. My mom warned me about playing with forces we don't know. Did you die here? Were you killed during the war? Are you the headless priest that roams these halls? Do you know Jose Rizal, our national hero? Are you a hottie? My friend giggled. At this point, we were all throwing random, stupid questions. Nothing. This is bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore, my friend said, exasperated. We were all thinking the same. Just then, a group of dogs from the neighboring house started barking at us through the chain link fence. These 6 dogs were growling and showing teeth. We all screamed and, without finishing the ritual, bolted right out of there. We didn't see each other until after Halloween break, and this is where the story gets creepy. One of the girls told us about a weird experience she had the night after playing with the Ouija board. She had gotten home late after hanging out with her friends from the neighborhood when she realized she forgot the keys to her house, so she called her brother up, who was then still sharing a room with her. And what he said crept the hell out of her. He swore she was already home. He claimed to have seen her walk in a while ago, and that she looked really tired and saw her head straight to bed. Creepy, but no need to freak ourselves out, was all we thought. Besides, her brother must have just been tired and seeing things. But then, my other friend started telling us about an encounter she had that Halloween night. She was going up to her room when the lights started flickering as she ascended the staircase. Your typical horror movie visuals. Shrug it off to faulty wiring. But just then, she saw the door to her room open, and a dark figure stepped out and stood atop of the staircase. She couldn't make out the entity's face, but she recounted that she couldn't move and felt utter dread as the figure stared down at her. "No way," my best friend, who just joined in the conversation, said in disbelief. "Something happened to me as well." He recalled that he was sleeping one night when he woke up feeling really uncomfortable. He described his vision as having TV-like static and a feeling of heaviness surrounding him. He looked around the room, and that's when he saw a bloody, charred face with piercing red eyes grinning at him through the window. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I had an almost run-in with death that night. After the ritual, I was sleeping in our sedan on the way home after fooling around with the Ouija board when I felt our car jerk. I woke up instantly. Looking out the window, I found out that we've been hit by a huge oil tanker. I panicked and leapt out of the car. Luckily, my mom and I survived the crash since the front of the car was a total wreck. I still don't have an explanation to why those things happened to us, but thank God nothing happened after that. I have never played or gotten near a Ouija board since.